Number 7. Edward. This is an unpopular opinion to say the least. I don't hate Edward, and I understand he was the first ever character created in the series, and respect him a lot because of that. However, there are some legitimate flaws, or lack of flaws, that a majority of the community seems to ignore because of this favoritism. One of the main issues I have with Edward's character is the fact that he's quite boring. He doesn't really have any flaws or negative aspects of his character. You know how James is vain, Thomas gets jealous easily, and Percy is hot-headed or scared? Well, what about Edward? He doesn't have any flaws. He's perfect. And a perfect character not only limits the stories that you can tell of them, but it also makes them less relatable. One thing I've noticed about Edward is that a majority of episodes with his name in the title are more focused on Gordon or another big pompous engine. Take Edward and Gordon, Edward the Really Useful Engine, and Edward the Great, for example. All have Edward's name in the title. However, Edward is not the best aspect of these episodes, or the main focus. It's Gordon or Spencer, because Edward isn't really the main focus. He's not the one making mistakes. He's not the one driving the plot. The fact that a majority of his episodes aren't even focused around him just proved my point further, that Edward is not a strong enough character. He doesn't have a distinct personality enough to carry his own episodes. He needs other, more interesting engines to do it for him. One of my final and most significant pet peeves with Edward is the fact that every single episode, or majority of episodes focused around him, repeat the same story arc. The big engines are teasing Edward, so he has to prove that he's a really useful engine and not just old and weak. Well, that kind of tarnishes his character when every other Tuesday he has to do the same exact thing. It portrays Edward as weak and pitiful, because that's what the engines constantly think of him all the time, so why would anyone think otherwise? It just tarnishes his character overall, because no one wants to root for a character that's constantly put down and always portrayed as just sad and pathetic. In a nutshell, Edward is my least favorite member of the STEAM team because he's constantly portrayed as pathetic, and he doesn't really have that much of a personality. I'm not saying that I agree with what Mattel did, but I understand why they kicked him off the main cast. Number 6. Henry. No, I do not hate the Railway series, guys, nor do I adore the BWBA era, because I know a lot of you are going to assume that based on my bottom 2. To put it simply, there aren't that many Henry episodes that I love, apart from the Flying Kipper. Although the episode is not beloved because of Henry's character himself, but rather the atmosphere, the music, and the crash. So I could argue that doesn't really count as a Henry episode, since I don't even think Henry has that many lines in it. While I do find his arc of overcoming his malfunctions and health issues to be very inspiring, however, before you burn me at the stake for saying this, it's a little hard for me to feel pity for Henry in episodes like Cole. And do you want to know why? Because Henry in Season 1 is pretty bad, almost as bad as Gordon and James. He's pompous, vain, goes on strikes, mean to Edward. I mean, all of a sudden I'm supposed to feel bad for him just because he's having a few health issues. And I know, maybe Henry's afraid of being scrapped, but the Fat Controller has never scrapped an engine, so I think that threat is just sort of taken away. If this were Gordon or James having these health issues, then we'd be laughing at them. This would be their karma, but since it's Henry, all of a sudden we're supposed to feel bad for him? Like, what? Moving on, a lot of episodes in Season 1 and after Season 1 portray him as just a carbon copy of Gordon, except for Henry's Forest, which I thought was an excellent addition to his character and set him apart from Gordon a lot. Henry's got a soft side, you know? Sure, he might be one of the big engine bullies, but he won't be the one to incite the teasing. He'll definitely join in on it, but he's not the biggest bully. That would be Gordon. He's got a strong, intimidating exterior, but a nice, warm, comforting interior. Nice, warm heart. That's how I interpret him. I despise the addition of his character where he's always afraid, anxious, and nervous, because while it wouldn't make sense for Henry to be afraid of snow since the Flying Kipper incident took place during winter, him being afraid of the dark and anything, just always worried, that really diminishes his character a lot and makes him just a lot less entertaining to watch, because no one wants to watch a character who's constantly afraid and just anxious and nervous all the time. That's just kind of annoying and not really that funny of a gag. I understand Henry's a fan favorite character. It's just that there are some problems I have with him that don't make me hate him, but just make me like him less than the other characters on this list. Number 5. Toby. Now this is how you do an old and wise character correct. Toby is stern and strict, yet humble and cheerful. I love how he's not afraid to speak his mind and takes no nonsense, especially from Daisy and Mavis. His interactions between those two are very entertaining. You know what else I love about Toby? When his railway is being closed down and he cries, I feel genuine sorrow for him because unlike Henry, I have a good reason to. There's no reason I shouldn't feel bad for Toby. I also just adore Toby's design. It's just so adorable and unique. He's this quaint, small little tram engine. I love tram engines. There's only one other tram engine on the island of Sodor, and that makes him so unique. Finally, Toby is a more effective mentor than Edward. What I mean by that is that when Edward gave advice to James or to Thomas, it might have worked in the moment, but the two characters very quickly resorted back to their original personas that Edward had tried to help them stay away from. But with Toby, when he was mentoring or, teaching Mavis, I guess you could say, Mavis actually, changed for the better. And I think that's an awesome part about Toby is that how he's actually wise. He can actually change engines and their personality. Number 4, Thomas. While he does get too much screen time and doesn't have the most distinct personality, I love Thomas. He goes through such an incredible arc over the course of the classic series. In season 1, he's a little brat that can go burn the scrapyards, just screw him. But as the series progresses, he becomes wiser to the point where he's not the one being given the advice, he's the one who gives the advice. His rivalry with Bertie is just classic. It's awesome, very entertaining to watch, and the bond and the friendship he forms with Percy is so wholesome. I mean, I love when these two are just hanging out being friends. And finally, while some would argue that him getting jealous of Annie and Clarabelle has kind of become a running gag in the show, I think it's better that he has that flaw that's constantly repeated than him having no flaws. Plus, his coming-of-age story, it's just so inspiring, it really is. Number 3, James. James is just entertaining to watch. He's got such a distinct personality. He's an outgoing, vain, cynical, flamboyant jerk. His flaws are the best aspect of his character, and the various ways karma is delivered to him in hilarious fashions is just awesome. He's got some of the most iconic and memorable crashes out of the entire series. Finally, James's classic series theme is very catchy, one of the best classic series themes in my opinion, and it really just encapsulates his bright, bubbly, outgoing personality. Number 2, Percy. Percy is a very admirable individual. No matter how awful Thomas is to him, Percy always forgives him and just puts up with his shenanigans. I do quite like that about their dynamic. Their friendship is very wholesome. Percy is also very hot-headed and readily jumps to conclusion. He's not the most level-headed engine, nor the wisest, which is great because you need characters like him in order to balance out the wise ones like Toby and Edward. Some of my favorite episodes Percy is the star of: Take Percy's Chocolate Crunch, Put Upon Percy, Percy's Promise, all excellent episodes that star Percy. There's a reason that he's always remained part of the core 3. Toby, James, Nia, the core symbol of the brand. They've all been replaced or will be replaced. But Percy, and Thomas of course, has always remained the symbol, the logo of the brand. And I think that's a testimony to how great, how vital and influential his character is to the brand. And number 1, drum roll please, Gordon! I love Gordon. His classic series theme is very fast-paced and gets the adrenaline pumping, But, oh my gosh, his new series theme, absolute perfection. The loud and booming tuba is just a flawless embodiment of his disposition. It honestly is the best new series theme, and I think the only time where the new series theme and the classic series theme has been on the same level of quality. Gordon goes through the best arc in the entire series, hands down, without a doubt. It starts in Off the Rails when his pompous and massive ego shine. Then in Down the Mine, instead of teasing Thomas for his accident, he sympathizes with him, and the two form an alliance. Just wow. Pure poetry right there. Before, Gordon is teasing those who are in an accident, but after he gets into one of his own, then he sympathizes and befriends one who is in an accident. And to the people who say Edward is the most important character in the show, you're wrong. Gordon is the most important character in the show. Do you want to know why? Well, Edward was created first, correct? But without Gordon, there wouldn't be any conflict Edward would have to overcome, for that matter. There wouldn't be any conflict in any of the stories at all. No Edward and Gordon, just Edward's day out. Without a villain, you can't have a story. So really, without Gordon, there'd only be two stories in the Three Railway Engines book, so the book probably would not get published, and then the show just wouldn't exist. And I'm not just saying that out of bias because Gordon is my favorite character. I genuinely, truly believe that without Gordon, there'd be no Thomas and Friends.